On August 28, 1986, mere months after WrestleMania 2 took place in three locations. Curse you, three location mania! Well, you got to see Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff continue their monumentally, wildly box office filled feud where they were just laying that shit in. It didn't matter what province, what venue, what state, what goddamn armory they decided to populate. They were packing the fans in because Orndorff, man, oh man, what a terrific worker Paul Orndorff was. Whether as a face or a heel, and after teaming with Hogan for a bit, he decided to turn on Hulk Hogan. And let me tell you something, what a goddamn main event program that was. But that wasn't the only match that wrestling fans in Toronto and surrounding areas, wherever they came from, there were 70,000 fans in the now demolished Exhibition Stadium. It was around 61,400, but who's counting? Evidently somebody that doesn't understand how you could just misplace around 8,500 fans. That's okay. WWE never fudged the goddamn numbers, ever, at all. They definitely never fudged the numbers for a following event. It took place in the Superdome. I mean, the Silverdome. Hogan's never going to live that down. Well, he's not going to live. But that being said, the whole point of this event was it was a precursor to WrestleMania 3. And it was a monumentally successful, great-looking night. Even if you can take a look at this card and watch it play out and realize, it didn't always used to be better. But anyway, I'm John Ritham with the Retro View of WWE's The Big Event from August 28, 1986. Yes, I know it's WWF's The Big Event. I don't want to get the pandas after me. That's why I'm putting WWE there. Now, much like when I retro-viewed WrestleFest 88, I'm going to go through the Vault channel and I'm going to review some of these home video releases and just talk about them with a little bit of factoid and a little bit of, like, you know, sprinkled in jokes and just having some fun because, look, this card, even being clipped, just being under 2 hours, you can get through it a lot easier now. Exhibition Stadium was a cool-looking venue in Toronto. I mean, I could be here for minutes and minutes and minutes and hours on end talking about the history of wrestling in Toronto. I mean, going back decades and decades, the Sheik drew. There was a lot of great shit. But that being said, the baseball, capacity was just over 43,000, but because they had seats on the field, obviously you could pack more people in. And it was a great-looking crowd, do not get me wrong. And the tickets apparently range from $8 to $20. I don't know if that was US or Canadian dollars. I don't have a clue. And while there was some adding, it's probably for the better, given some of the matches they did edit. Gene Okerlund. Apparently, it was Arnie in the sky giving us a news report. Tell my wife I love it. That's great, Gene. But he was introducing us, showing the Toronto skyline, and then we get Hoss Funk. Yes, Dory Funk Jr. was called Hoss Funk. And Jimmy Jack Funk and I Don't Care. Jimmy Jack Funk and I Don't Care. Jimmy Jack Funk and I Don't Care as Terry went away. Because his horse was sick. No, wait, the horse being sick was in 93, but he basically decided, I need to go somewhere else and do something. And honestly, as great as Terry Funk was one of the all-time greats, he could only stay in certain places for so long, and I don't think Vince would have gotten Terry Funk. He did beat Mel Phillips on his debut, which is good. Should have beaten him up more. Freaking goddamn creep. But that being said, they took on the Killer Bees, B. Brian Blair, and Jumping Jim Brunzell. The stadium looked great. The commentary was often by Monsoon, Ernie Ladd, and Luscious Johnny Valiant. I will let you decide who of those three did not belong on commentary. And I will tell you that you're wrong if you said anybody other than Luscious Johnny Valiant. Who, yeah, great talker, and it's kind of funny that he was commentating the main event, given the fact that he was Hogan's manager in the AWA, briefly. It was nice to see that, the crowd was very into this. The crowd, I think, was starting to get very restless at some points. Dory Jr. was about 200 here. I kid, of course. Dory Jr., one of the all-time greats as well. The match was what it was. The Bees used their mask gimmick and got a roll-up to win it. A lot of roll-ups won it. Won the matches here, that is. So it was what it was. It was 6.5 minutes, and then we got King Tonga, aka Haku, working as a face against the magnificent Morocco with Mr. Fuji. Fuji Vice forever. Some of this was clipped probably just as well because it was a 20-minute draw. Lots of arm focus in this and a nerve hold that went on forever to the point they had to clip it. And there was a working of the knee on the post and in the ring. And eventually Haku tried for a crossbody and hit it, but unfortunately the bell rang and it was a time limit draw. And while Morocco, a terrific IC champion, did not work as a face at all, he's a more natural heel, at least on TV. I don't know if he's a nice guy or not. Haku, it probably should have been like a 10-minute match, but I guess they didn't want to beat either of them. And then Ted Arcidi took on Tony Garea. Yes, they had Tony Garea wrestling in 1986, and I don't know why. Ted Arcidi, prototype for being the kind of guy that Vince would look at and appreciate. On so many goddamn supplements, it's insane. I mean, he was a power lifter, and he was like born in 58, and he got into wrestling in 85, and he left in 90, or he retired in 90. And since then has done whatever, and that's fine. I mean, it's okay. He wasn't any good, but he looked great until the bell rang. He did win with a bear hug. Some of the crowd was distracted by something else, seemingly a fight in the crowd, or maybe the Blue Jays were, playing on a big screen elsewhere. Actually, I think the Blue Jays might have been playing at Exhibition Stadium, so that might not have worked. But Mean Gene then interviewed Jimmy Hart about Adrian Adonis and JYD, and JYD ripping off Jimmy's pants. That's not a euphemism. That's actually how this feud was built. But yeah, Ted Arcidi, not very good. JYD took on Adrian Adonis with Jimmy Hart. Oh no, Adrian Adonis in Canada. Nothing bad will ever happen after this. And yeah, Adonis was bleeding at one point because JYD hit him with his chain a whole lot. I think the ref just decided, I'm just going to let this go because JYD, bless him, was not that good. Not that good at all. Physically, limited, but his charisma just oozed. He could hit some good power stuff. By this point, he was not doing that great. So JYD did win by a count out. I don't know how he won by a count out because of the messy finish, but whatever. Bless Jimmy Hart for taking some bumps here. So there we are. Yeah, Adonis definitely needed to cut the weight at this point, and did. He did end up cutting the weight, and you have to wonder if he had not been in Newfoundland, I believe, what would have happened. Would he have come back to the WWF? Possibly, who knows. But then we had Dick Slater against Iron Mike Sharp. What in the Superstars of Wrestling taping was this? Dick Slater, as a face, for some reason, won it. I mean, Iron Mike Sharp was a natural heel with that, forearm guard, but oh boy. Yeah, Dick Slater, not exactly a great guy either, but whatever, he's dead, so it doesn't matter. Mean Gene is with Bobby the Brain Heenan on the 6-man, and also the fact he's going to lead Orndorff to the championship. How about that? Bobby Heenan, King Kong Bundy, which I'm sorry, it's just funny knowing the story that Cornette said about Ernie Ladd saying, Bundy, you big fat piece of shit, and just Ernie Ladd calling a match where Bundy's in it just made me laugh. And Big John Studd took on the Machines, a super machine, which was Bill Eadie, who would later become Demolition Axe. And then the Big Machine, that was Blackjack Mulligan in the twilight of his career. And Captain Lou Albano, because you needed a manager on each side, with the Giant Machine. That was clearly the Haiti Kid. No, it was obviously Andre the Giant. You couldn't actually have the midget under a mask or whatever. Nobody would buy that, and sure, people got no reason to. Well, anyway. So yeah, the Giant Machine, Andre the Giant. Heenan played up the Weasel chance in the pre-match promo. And this is not good at all. I mean, when Bundy was your best fucking worker, I mean, Studd was a good worker to an extent, but when Bundy was your best worker at this point, that's just not a good thing. I mean, Mulligan had been wrestling for about 80 million years. Eadie was fading away because, he's a mass superstar and he'd done a lot of stuff and had been wrestling since the Georgia days, maybe even before. Good Lord. The managers get involved. And then Andre the Giant comes in, And basically the idea is if Andre the Giant got unmasked, and he would be suspended for life. This was done, I believe, there's a storyline reason. I can't remember if it was an injury or something, but I know that he would do tours of Japan, but this is just mere months away from him turning on Hogan and joining Heenan. And you could tell by this point that Andre was near done. And bless him. Bless Andre the Giant for being one of the biggest draws ever. I mean, stature-wise and just box office-wise. But it led to a DQ win for the heels, but they didn't really look like winners, and Heenan bumped his ass off, as he was known to do. And Ricky Steamboat took on Jake the Snake in a Snake Pit match. No step on Snake. I don't know why Jake was in a weird silk bathrobe-like jacket, but nevertheless. There's one point where Jake the Snake attacked Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Monsoon said, and I quote, Jake the Snake tried to Pearl Harbor the Dragon. Remember how Ricky said that his parents were mixed and the grandparents didn't approve of that? And yeah, his mother was Japanese. Oh boy. So anyway, this is Ricky seeking revenge after a DDT on the floor where, I'll block it, don't worry. And he blocked it. He blocked it with a skull, which is probably not something you want to do on the floor. But it probably was less painful than dealing with Bonnie. Bonnie, that stupid twat that I have nothing good to say about and never deserved to be on TV and is a goddamn idiot. And deserves to be ridiculed for, assuming she's still alive. I hope she's dead. I hope she suffered horribly. Ruining a lot of Ricky's possible, second part of his career. Bitch. So, anyway, after the DDT on the floor, in the lead up to this, we got this match. Now, Steamboat had the bandana around his head, the Bruce Lee stuff, but also to protect the fact that he was, that he still had his head busted open. First, Ricky got his face, bashed on the floor by Ric Flair and sandpaper and stuff like that, and all that. And now this. Ricky's face was just constantly taking a beating. I mean, when you get it in the face from a man named Jake the Snake a lot, you're going to probably not be doing well. Good stuff, honestly. They laid their shit in. There was action on the floor since it was no DQ. And, Jake targeted the head for massive damage. Targeted the swollen head of the dragon as he just spit fire out. I run a clean show. And a roll-up out of nowhere won it, which was kind of hilarious because Jake thought he won it and did like this and then got rolled up. Not Jackknife Cover. Jackknife Cover is another match. But this was actually a pretty big deal and actually a pretty good match for what they were doing. And then Billy Jack Haynes, the murderer, future murderer, took on Hercules Hernandez, the future no-seller of Sid's Powerbomb as he left the company. And Monsoon called it solo, and Jesus Christ, I guess nobody cared about this match, including the crowd. The crowd really didn't care. But at one point, Billy Jack tried for the full Nelson, and Monsoon said, trying to reach around, I did not laugh. Shut up, I did not laugh. And a backslide won it. Did not have the same reaction from the crowd as Kerry Von Erich got beating Ric Flair in Texas Stadium. Even if this crowd was bigger, they didn't have the story going into it. Also, I think the siblings of Billy Jack and Hercules were still mostly alive by this point. That's mean. I'm sorry. Actually, in 86, there was only two that were gone. That was Jack Jr. and David, and followed by Mike, and followed by Chris, and Kerry. And then Fritz's brain went on the Fritz. Let's move on. The Rougeaus, Jacques and Ramon, took on the Dream Team. It was managed by the luscious Johnny Valiant, but he was all the way in the skybox yelling. And it was kind of annoying. Like, go down there. I believe Johnny Valiant's dead, if I remember right. I think he was hit. I think he was in some kind of car accident or whatever it was, but nevertheless. Beefcake and Greg Valentine were the Dream Team, and there were three people in red tights in this, and Beefcake in his silly purple tights, and Beefcake was not a good worker. He was better in a team because you could hide the fact that he really wasn't all that fucking good. The Rougeaus were a great team. And Valentine and Beefcake did play off of each other pretty well, but I don't know if Valentine liked Beefcake. I don't have a clue. Valentine never smiled, so he fit a lot of people that came out of Seattle at that point. But the match was okay. I think it went a little bit longer than it needed to. A roll-up won it. Again, lots of roll-ups. But Raymond may have been the illegal man, and Johnny Valiant all got upset about that. So far, it has its peaks and valleys, with Steamboat and Jake the Snake being the standouts so far. Obviously, everybody was coming for the main event. But first, you had to sit through Handsome Harley Race, who had just come into the company recently, against Pedro Morales in 1986. Now, Morales, I believe, was part of the Battle Royal at Mania 2. And Triple Crown champion, former WWF champion, former IC champion, former tag team champion. And bless Pedro. One of the true greats of the Vince Senior era, even into the early 80s. Still fucking great. But my God, this match was only 3.5 minutes, and it probably shouldn't have been on the card, but I get why. Harley won with, like tripping up Pedro and putting his feet on the ropes to get the victory. And yeah, Harley was no picnic to work with at this point either, because he was broken down and very beat up because of car accidents and injuries, and probably the general bad nature of him not treating his wives correctly. But yeah, that's something that obviously wouldn't factor into somebody's work. Harley Race, one of the toughest ever. Toughest wrestler on God's green earth. But the dark side only told a bit of the problems that Harley had and caused. But Hulk Hogan, speaking of problems, and yes, I've said what I've said about Hogan. I stand by everything I said. If you don't like it, I don't care. Hogan against Paul Orndorff with Bobby the Brain Heenan, and it was for the WWF Championship. One of Hogan's biggest drawing feuds. Like, seriously. It was this. It was the Big Boss Man. Because, yes, the stuff with Andre drew, but the stuff with Andre was sporadic because of Andre's need for back surgery. Orndorff injured his neck at one point, and if you notice, by the time he got to, I think 1990, it was this arm, I believe, was starting to atrophy because of the pinched nerve, or whatever the fuck it is, slip disc, pinched nerve, whatever the fuck it was. And it was starting to just take a little bit of hold. You'd have to really look, because this was 86, but you'd have to look kind of close, but you could tell. Now, that being said, Orndorff had taken the fall in the Mania 1 tag match. You know, when Bob Orton hit him with his cast inadvertently, and he held his neck, and that might have actually been where his neck issue started. Who knows? But then he was, he disassociated from Roddy Piper, and then would actually go on a face run with Hogan, teaming up and stuff like that. But then after Mania 2 is where Orndorff turned on Hogan, and, hit the short clothesline and stuff like that. Great build, because they did all this stuff where Hogan was too busy to talk to Orndorff, and they referred to him as Mini Hogan and all that. And Orndorff turned on him, and basically became a great goddamn feud. And this wasn't the culmination of it. They would continue to feud. They would go to, Saturday Night's Main Event, the beginning of 1987, that cage match where they both dropped at the same time, but the tie goes to the champion, because that doesn't work for me, brother. But it was more of a brawl than a match. There's suplex on the outside by Paul. Some good action. He teased a pile driver, but Hogan fought out of it. Hogan ends up no-selling a pinfall and, and does his usual stuff. Ref bump. Hogan basically sets up the pile driver, and then Bobby Heenan hits him with a stool, which was kind of funny. Who throws a stool, honestly? And then, more, we get a little more, teasing, okay, shit, Orndorff's actually going to win. And he covers, but the ref takes about 8 million years. Terrible referee work all night, by the way. These referees either were commission referees or didn't understand how to count. They were terrible. But he ends up tapping Orndorff on the shoulder, and Orndorff's like, oh, I won. No, you didn't win. It was a DQ. And then we get a post-match brawl where Hogan basically ends up standing tall. And that is the big event. And yes, the precursor to WrestleMania 3, where if you look on a map, if you Google map how far Toronto and Detroit are, now you might have to go back to 1987 to see just what the traffic was like. But even now, I imagine it's probably a few hours, and you could probably make it there pretty easily, as long as you have the proper paperwork and everything. Papers, please. Your papers. But basically, Toronto and Detroit were mecca cities, and Vince knew he could get a lot of people over there. And he did. Mania 3 ended up being very, very successful, Hogan and Andre. But really the show-stealing thing was Steamboat and Savage, because Savage was always better than Hogan. And he never wanted to admit that. But they made up before Savage died. Of course they did, Hulk. Of course they did. That's another story for another day, though. There are more tapes on the Vault channel. Invasion 92. There's WrestleFest 91 and 92. There's the Global Warfare show. There's other stuff. So I got stuff in the pipeline that I'll be reviewing gradually, eventually. Maybe. At some point. I mean, I got a lot of movies. I got a lot of work coming up in the next couple months. Because in case you don't see the date on this when you click on it, I'm recording this in the latter part of August. And I will end up basically having a lot of work the next couple months. So nevertheless, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rittland. And until we exhibition again, happy trails to you.